Welcome back to the Responsible Raw Materials podcast, where we explore the people, ideas, and actions shaping a more responsible future for our natural resources. Today's conversation is about challenging assumptions. I'm joined by David Strang, a mining entrepreneur whose career has taken him from growing up in a South African mining town through Stanford University and international athletics to building a successful copper mining company in Brazil. What I particularly enjoyed about this conversation is that David has a habit of questioning things that many of us simply accept. Why don't geologists have a stronger voice in mining companies? Why do we assume experience always comes with age? Why shouldn't a young engineer use artificial intelligence to rethink how a mine operates? And perhaps most importantly, why can't mining companies create lasting value for communities long after the ore body has been exhausted? Throughout our conversation, we explore what it means to build a company that's prepared to challenge convention, one that trusts young people with responsibility, one that embraces new technologies, one that encourages people to ask why, instead of simply accepting that this is how we've always done it. We also discuss the importance of social license, why listening is often far more powerful than telling, and how some of the most effective community programs begin not with large budgets, but with a genuine willingness to understand what people actually need. It's an optimistic conversation about leadership, innovation, and the belief that better ideas can come from anywhere if we're prepared to listen. I hope you enjoy it. So we're in the Lima Conference Center, obviously in Peru. But David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is David Strang. I'm the currently I'm the chairman of Ero Copper Corp. Was the co-founder of the company and original CEO of the company. Ero is a mining company that operates in Brazil. We have 3 operating mines, 2 copper mines, a gold mine, and currently developing a copper gold deposit in the country as well.
So what brought you to Brazil?
The opportunity. I've been in the mining industry my entire career. I have been working primarily in copper my entire career and had done a lot of work in resource development companies, developing copper assets in Chile, Argentina, Peru, and had heard about this company in Brazil called Mineral Caraíba. I'd looked to potentially buy it back in the 2000s. That opportunity didn't come up. And then out of the blue, a phone call came saying the company had gone bankrupt and would we be interested in it? Initially, when you hear bankruptcy, you go, no. But we thought, given our understanding of resource development, that there was an opportunity to do something interesting with the asset base. But I hadn't operated in Brazil before, but I hadn't operated in Argentina or Chile or Peru or Colombia or Guatemala and any of the other countries. So, it was a great opportunity, and it's been a wonderful 10 years that we've had in operating in Brazil.
So we'll come back to what you've been doing in Brazil in a second, but where are you from originally?
Believe it or not, I'm a Glaswegian.
No way, that is not in your accent.
No. Well, give me a drink or two. But my family left, and I grew up in South Africa, and then left South Africa when I was 18 to go to university in California, and attended Stanford University there on a track and field or athletic scholarship. Did that. I got a degree essentially in mineral economics. Then ran for a few years for Great Britain, and then retired after the 96 Olympic Games and went off and started my mining career at the original goldfields of South Africa, worked there for a couple of years, left, and then went into consulting, valuation consulting with a group called Corporate Value Consulting in San Francisco for a number of years before moving to Vancouver 23 years ago.
Amazing. So let's go back to the fact that we're both Scottish.
Okay, fantastic. So it's good.
So
there's a connection.
Yeah, there we go. There's the connection, and our Scottish accents can now come out.
Come out, exactly.
But in terms of going to Stanford and that education and on being on a track and field scholarship, was it by being on that scholarship that enabled you to go to the university, or would you have gone to university anyway?
I would have gone to university. Probably wouldn't have been able to go to Stanford, but certainly I was always in the cards to go to university. My mother wanted me to be a doctor, even though I didn't like the sight of blood, which was a bit of a issue.
Yeah.
But what was great about the Stanford opportunity and the career education there was you didn't have to make a decision of what degree you had to do when you went in. So I changed my degree a number of times before I found what I really loved. And that passion for geology, that passion for the industry in general, I think came out of growing up in a small town called Benoni, which is, an old mining town.
Yeah.
And so seeing mine dumps, seeing headgear all the way around, and in high school having the opportunity to go nearly 3,000 meters underground in one of the big gold mines certainly evoked my passion for the industry.
So what was that like? So, you're in high school and someone's taking you 3 kilometers underground?
Yeah. I went to school with somebody whose father was the mine manager at a mine at that time called West Streetfontein. And a group of 10 of us were selected. I love geography, I love geology, so I got selected to go on the trip. And yeah, they didn't mess around. They took us all the way down. We were in a stope sloping about 30 degrees. It was about 75 centimeters wide.
Yeah.
And watching people mining gold at that depth is pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So I also used to live in Joburg
Oh,
for a
really?
little
Well, there
while.
you go.
There we go. Yes, I seem to be following you. What I haven't done though is run for Great Britain. Can you
Ah.
tell us a little bit about that?
I don't know. At the time it was everything in my world, but as I tell people today, it's not very complicated. You run fast, turn left. But yeah, no, I had a nice career. I won a few things. Got to represent Great Britain, which is always an achievement, and things like that. But yeah, it was nice. But ultimately, it was a chapter towards doing what I do today.
So in terms of, I guess, turning the page on that chapter, was it just very natural in terms of when you said, right, okay, I'm going to retire from running and now I'm going to actually get on with the other stuff that I've been really passionate about all of my life?
Yeah, I came out of high school. Time-wise, I was ranked second in the world, so I was meant to be the next coming. And it just didn't seem to work out. And at the time, I probably could have kept running. May have been able to make the 2000 Olympic team. Hindsight, you never know. But I also knew you have your Nirvana moment, and my Nirvana moment was standing in the starting line at the '96 Olympic Games in my heat and looking up at the score. And I'd been offered a job already at Goldfields,
Yeah.
and looking up at the score board and seeing that I was the only guy in my heat who was born in the 1960s. And I went, maybe that's a sign. And I was only 27. So I looked at it and I was like, no, this is a great opportunity that Goldfields has offered me to join the mineral economic division there, to really do what I had studied. And so, yeah, it was time to move on.
So did it just feel right?
Yeah. Yeah. I ran that race. Ran one of the worst races of my career. It was sort of like everything kind of folded in. I was like, no, this is the right move. And yeah, it was great. I've never looked back. I had no regrets.
So tell us about Goldfields.
So I joined Goldfields, the GFSA, the old Goldfields, not the one that's still alive today. And that company, in the 1930s was the richest company in the world. They'd paid a German, this German who had the magnetometer, and he went out in the West Rand and discovered the gold, because Goldfields was going bankrupt at that time, and found the West Wits. And through that, Goldfields bought everything, controlled it all, and grew into the richest company in the world in the 1930s in terms of the gold mines there, or at least the richest gold mining company in the world. And by the time I came to the company, it was on its last legs. From the standpoint, it got bloated. It lost its way. The largest shareholder at the time wanted change. I was in the mineral economics division in the base metals. So I was looking after a mine in the Northern Cape called Black Mountain, which was a polymetallic mine, and a deposit called Gamsberg,
Yeah.
which was largest, one of the largest undeveloped zinc deposits in the world. So
Yeah.
for starting out in the career, it was what a great way to do it. I mean, talking to the executives, being in charge of, I ran a full feasibility study for the company at that age. And so it was just a great place to learn. I mean, Goldfields really was, I mean, at that time with regards to the structures and stuff like that. But, you know, after two years there, my wife wanted to go do an MBA, and she's American. Uh, Goldfields had split up. I'd been left as supposedly acquisition manager of the base metal division of the remaining company after the gold assets merged with Gencor. And what I realized quickly is I was dispositions manager, and was starting to be asked to start selling things off. And like anything else, it's not a happy time when you start seeing a company end like that. And my wife, as I said, wanted to do MBA, and it was just a great time to kind of move on.
So where did you go?
We moved to Seattle. So I moved to Seattle in the biggest tech boom in history, and I couldn't get a job. I was walking around the Bellevue Convention Center in my suit, handing in resumes to companies, and people going, mining? What are we going to do with mining? So I was in a bit of a wonderland for about 18 months, but I started commuting up to Vancouver to go and see what I could do. I was ambitious. At that age, I was 30 years old, trying to put deals together in the biggest bear market at that time. Copper was at 60 cents a pound. Gold was at 250. You know, nothing was happening, and trying to do stuff there. And it was tough. I got to meet a lot of great people, but I needed a job. And that ultimately ended up me moving to San Francisco and joining Corporate Value Consulting, at that time owned by PwC, the largest valuation firm in the world. And I became mining industry expert for them. And so that really was my sort of master's or PhD in valuation. I've valued everything on the planet, from Frontera, the New Zealand dairy company, all the way through to tech companies and things like that. But my focus was mining, and actually my biggest client was a aggregates company in California, really interested in doing probabilistic modeling and for the future. And that really got me going, and my brain starting to move towards probability, understanding that, and a new way of looking at things as opposed to how we'd looked at things historically. And at the end of the day, I got a phone call from a gentleman named Ross Beaty, who's really well known in the mining industry, in 2003. He was looking for somebody who could explain his new company, which was called Lumina Copper. And original Lumina, Ross started acquiring undeveloped copper projects in the bear market with the view that the copper price was going to change. They were essentially call options in the ground. We weren't going to do anything with them. And he, brilliant mind in terms of putting the portfolio together. We had 10 projects. I started working for them. Ultimately ran 7 of the 8 companies that we had. And it was a great success as a great team. We developed those assets. Copper price started to move. And we invested $16 million to acquire them. Spent about $150 million over a 10-year period in developing them, and we're able to sell them off for over $1.6 billion.
That's a nice multiple.
Great multiple. It was a great learning experience. It was great to learn under Ross and see how companies work, and certainly how to build companies. And he's a great company builder. He's done an amazing job over the years. You may have known him from Pan American Silver. You know, he started Equinox Gold. You know, he's done some amazing stuff. So it was a great guy to learn from. And from that, you know, like anything else, you know, the young bird has to leave the nest, and I went off on my own, and that's where Ero started. So it's been a journey. It's been fun. It's been absolutely fun.
Well, and I guess all of that experience is what you're drawing on now with regards to what you're doing in Brazil.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were operating in countries that we hadn't operated before, in Chile and Argentina and Peru, and we actually even went into Guatemala on the nickel project. But yeah, understanding and having an understanding that, you know, we may have our methods as, you know, I call them Western companies, North American companies, or European companies in terms of how we do things. But what I've really found in the countries I've worked here all over South America, people speak the same language in terms of finance. People speak the same language in terms of law. These places aren't scary places. People are great. So I've worked with some of the best people in the world in different countries down here, and so yeah, it's I'm more than comfortable just staying in South America the rest of my career. Yeah.
So I'm assuming that you're living in Brazil at the moment then?
No, I live in Vancouver. What's even worse is I can barely speak Portuguese and Spanish, and I've worked in these countries for 23 years. So that doesn't say a lot about me, but it says a hell of a lot about everybody I've worked with regards to their willingness to learn English, as opposed to my ineptness of learning Portuguese and Spanish.
Well, we'll carry on in English with regards
Yeah,
to this discussion.
please do. Yeah. Well, I can order a beer and I can order a wine and I can ask where the bathroom is. So the important things.
Yeah, the essentials in life.
Essentials, yeah.
So, well, let's talk about some of the projects, some of the assets that you've got at the moment, and we were having a conversation earlier on today around not just how do you optimize those assets and realize that full value, but also sometimes there are some really simple solutions or ways forwards where you can take into account the needs, the values of a wide range of different people.
Yeah, the fundamentals I learned working with Ross and the team around us was respecting the countries that you go into. I've always worked on the assumption that the communities you work with, as a mining industry, we can't leave. The assets are there, right? It's not like tech where tech can pick up and go. If they don't like a country, they can move. We can't. And so coming in and first impressions are everything. Respecting the communities, respecting the culture that you're going into is paramount. And, learning that particularly here in Peru, where we worked up in a very challenging area in and around the Yanacocha mine with our project up there called Galeno, and just being able to see how well we were able to do with regards to just listening to what the communities needed. They weren't anti-mining. They certainly were anti being messed around. And so everywhere I took that philosophy, and it's kept us in good stead everywhere we've worked. And a big part of our due diligence, mining this bankrupt mining company, was our social license, and understanding social license is paramount. I can't speak anything more than that. It's paramount, and so that has always been a way we've tried to operate. It's provided huge solutions for a lot of things that we've done, and we talked about some of the community work that we do, and trying to find win-win solutions for our communities. But in terms of our asset base and things like that, we've always drawn from. I'm a great believer in geologists. I'm a great believer that that geologists don't get treated in the way they should be treated in mining companies. From the standpoint is a mining engineer, like an accountant, a lawyer, anybody else in the company doesn't have a job if they don't find it. And because I used to say to the engineers, yes, it's black magic what they do. It's a bit magical. You don't quite understand what they're doing. It's a bit more difficult, but they're really good at what they do. And when we formed Ero, we made sure we had a chief geological officer, part of our C-suite. And so that's really helped us in terms of optimizing our asset base. When we acquired the assets, one mine had no reserves. The other mine had 5 years. Caraíba today, the copper mine has gone from 5 to 20 plus. But not only that, we've gone from 20 to 45,000 tons a year of production. Below gold mine had no reserves. That is gone now. We should be close to 10 years of reserves today, mining at close to 60 to 70,000 ounces a year, up from 19. So, and that's all because of geologists, understanding the rock, understanding to grow it, and do that.
So that's not all that usual, though, in terms of putting that faith and that belief in the geologists within a company.
Yeah, I've always found it fascinating that they didn't have the, for lack of better terminology, respect. And it's a cornerstone, right? And I mean, you look at our Furnace project that we've done with Vale. Vale spent 20 years drilling that. They drilled 90,000 meters of drilling and couldn't figure out a way to get it to work. Not to say that anything with regards to that, it was a different approach that they had, but we came in with a different approach from exploration, and that's a win-win situation for both companies now with regards to that. But that goes coming down to our geos understanding, hey, listen, there's something here that they may have missed, and our guys were able to see it, and we were able to drill it, and they've done an amazing job with that. And now that's going to be a really successful mine down the road.
So in terms of talent, so there's an awful lot of conversation around how do we attract and retain the best possible people within the industry. I think one reason why people leave is because they feel disrespected or something doesn't quite work out, and you go, "Oh, but I could have told you about that." Do you feel that that is different because you actually are respecting those geologists?
We still lose geos because they go off and take other jobs, and we like to think they get promoted into those jobs because they've worked with us. I think throughout our organization, we've always taken I tried to, when my partner at the time, Noel, and I put the company together, it was very much based around this a flat management structure. There's only two assholes in the company, Noel and I. That questions and comments were encouraged. It was a challenging. We wanted a challenge environment with regards to anybody and within the organization. That has always been something that we wanted, and I saw that in the tech industry. And what I was doing is challenge environment. We have a philosophy: always ask why. If anybody says, "Well, this is how it's done," that is something in our organization that's unacceptable. Yes, it may ultimately be the reason why we do it, but at least challenge why we're doing it this way. And I think we've tried to take a different approach, like we're embracing AI. It's not complicated to do what we've done with regards to, we just anybody in our company can have a Claude license. It's $150,000 a year. The geologists already have covered that cost this year with a spacing study. We're doing in the conference, I gave an example of a young engineer who's taking Claude, and he's taking our radio traffic in the mine and transcribing it and having Claude analyze it. And what that's already generating is preliminary daily production reports and or helping us understand where there are bottlenecks, because people complain over the radio and shout and scream at each other, and it's great. And so instead of having a mine with 50,000 sensors that we're trying to understand, we can learn from the radio traffic. Now, we won't learn everything down to the nth degree, but we're learning a lot more than we would have. And so these are the things I think I find fascinating now, is what's happening, whether it's that or some of the technologies, AI that we're seeing around exploration and things like that. Is just in our situation, as I said, 90% of our organization will use Claude in order to improve their report writing or presentations. But it's those 10% of people, giving them the opportunity, allowing them to go off and then listening to them is what we're excited about. So coming back about talent retention and things like that, it's the youth. We deliberately, our C-suite is one of the youngest in the industry. That's deliberate. We trust our team. We trust that they're going to make decisions. Yes, they're going to make mistakes. That's part of the thing of why the board's there, to provide them with the rails, so to speak. But allow people within that and keep that culture going and allow people to thrive and give them opportunity. I think what happens there is new things come out. And we see it in tech. I mean, I've always said, people said, oh, Mako, when we promoted him to CEO, is 38 years old. Oh, isn't he a little young? I was like, did anybody say that to Mark Zuckerberg? Or did they say it to Sergey Brin or Larry Page or to Elon Musk? No, they went off and did it. So what makes our industry that you need gray hair in order to be good at it? And I find that fascinating with regards to how our industry has decided that you have to have a certain way. Just like Flavia in the presentation today talked about women. We don't have enough women in the industry, and we need more leadership from that. Better ideas, different things will come from it. So we need to change the way we're doing things in terms of the way we compete and the way we do things, because every other industry that I see that is more open to ideas do radical things that we need to start doing.
So what kind of things do you think we should change, or what actions do you think we should be taking?
Well, the biggest and first thing I think we have to do is we have to change the conversation of how we're viewed. As I said in my presentation, we're so dumb. We've called ourselves miners for 100 years. Yet over the last 4 or 5 years, suddenly it became critical minerals, and suddenly everybody wants to know us. Um, the industry, I think, has done a poor job of helping people understand. And we had a great panel discussion today where somebody said nobody actually knows where the metals are coming from or what metals are in their iPhone or in their computer, right? And maybe if they knew more about where everything comes from, they'd be better prepared to understand what impact we have on their lives, right? The average iPhone has between 50 and 60 elements from the periodic table. Nobody knows where they come from. And so, I was in London and talking to somebody in the shop. They said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm in the copper mining business." I was like, "What's copper used for?" And you could turn around and go, "Oh, that person, how naive." Or you could turn around and go, "I think there's a lot more people like her in the world than that." And if you don't know that, then you know, how can we attract talent to us industry? And we do. I think fundamentally we need to attract more talent. I think in a lot of countries like Brazil, we've got great talent in terms of our operations and things like that. But I'm talking about people and some of the very top institutions in the world where people are looking at changing, causing change, right? Not necessarily just implementing the same thing, but causing change. We need to attract them and to the industry so that we can change.
Have you got any examples of projects or different activities where you had the opportunity to partner or engage with, say, universities? I guess in order to bring in different skill sets that ordinarily wouldn't be involved in mining.
So we're a founding sponsor of Mineral X at Stanford. Mineral X is a phenomenal program that Professor Jeff Cares has put together, very revolutionary in terms of his outlook. He, for a long time, he was a professor when I was at school. Don't want to age Jeff, but
He looks very young.
he does look young, amazingly. But he was a geostats professor in oil and gas. And I think, as he said to me, I started to see that I needed to change. And he looked at critical minerals. The Stanford AI lab is legendary in the industry as, the home of AI. And the professor, Michael, I can't remember Michael's last name. That's my bad. Him and Jeff got together and put Mineral X together. And, we're a title sponsor of that. We're supporting some postdoc work. We're supporting some PhD work and looking at AI and in our sector. We're hoping to maybe, take some of our people and put them in at Stanford to bring that in-house now to Stanford, to Ero, because, we view that as phenomenal opportunities for change. And I mean, you're working with some of the brightest people. I mean, really, as I said to my wife after my first meeting with some of them, I've got to raise my game because I'm talking to 27, 28-year-olds who are running me off the table. So, so that's the collaboration we've done. We've done stuff with Queen's University in Ontario. We do a lot with universities in Brazil. We've done some fascinating work in and around safety and safety technology in Brazil. So we try, as much as we can to try and do as much collaboration with universities as we can.
And how about actually implementing the outputs from that research? I mean, do you operationalize them?
Yeah, so I'll give the one that we did with, I think it was the University of Sao Paulo. So safety. So one of the things about safety is you're having people doing a repetitive function every day. And the problem with regards to that is as you do safety, you never know, the shift boss or the mine captain meets the team that's going underground, for instance, and they go through the safety every day. So these are what are the 5 things we have to watch for. And for mostly, every day of every week that these people are working, the top 5 are always the top 5. So they're writing them all down again. But that becomes too regular, right? And we were starting to see accidents that we didn't like, and we're like, but they knew this. So in collaboration with one of the universities down there, we built a game And it's a game that's now played on everybody's phone before you come to work. On your way to work, you've had to have played the game. And the game looks into, and it's built around the psychology. Not everybody has a good day, right? You may have problems at home. You may have this. You may have not got sleep that night. You may have gone out and partied a little too hard, right? But everybody's coming to work and they're going to put their out. The game can analyze to an extent that person's mindset based against the baseline. And it's the responsibility now of the mind captain. They get all the data to reassign. And we think we've seen stuff come out of that work. And that was research being done in Brazil through a university there that we were able to implement. And it's been fantastic. So, things like that are phenomenal.
That's truly amazing. I'd really love to have a look at the game. That would be amazing. So I'd like to finish off with goats.
Yes, the goat story. So this is one of those, you come into a community and you realize that sometimes there's win-wins. And in a respect with the Caraíba operation, this part of Brazil is actually, nobody associates Brazil with arid conditions, but this part of Brazil is quite arid. It's the only place in Brazil you can find cactus. But in that condition, our competing land use is goat herders. And goat herding there, because the ground's not really strongly arable in terms of crops, that people have subsistence farming in and around goat herding. The problem with goat herding is we also have a responsibility with rehabilitation in and around our mine and tailings and all sorts of things like that. And we do a pretty good job of that. The problem is the goat herders kept cutting the fences down because the grass, it was always greener on the other side of the fence. And so this was a big problem for us because, the environmental agency would come and look and, your grass is gone. And you're going, but it was there 2 weeks ago. We, again, a collaboration with the university and a local vet came up with an idea. Hey, there's a win-win here if Ero is willing to support potentially looking at building small dairies in the district. And the thematic is, on average, with 300 goats, you can make 300 reais a month. And the goats are sold for meat. You can make 300 reais of the same amount of money with 13 female goats if you milk them. The great thing about milking them is you also then pen them. But you got to feed them. And so part of what we did with this is also came up with a micro lending plan that would help with irrigation to put in this type of cactus, the soft cactus that the goats love. And so that program has reduced the goat population significantly. They are endemic, right, to the region. They're not originally from there. So we're seeing, local areas starting to reflourish because goats can be quite destructive. The dairies have now, they're winning awards all over for Brazil because they produce not only cheese, but they're producing products like shampoos and all sorts of stuff from it. And it's brilliant. And everybody's winning by doing it. And it's just an example of programs listening, seeing what the problem is, and then trying to find a solution for everybody, as opposed to, going after the herder. The herder's there. He needs to feed his goats. And he's seeing green grass. You can't tell him he can't, right? So this worked out. It's been a great program. And so, yeah, it's all about the goats.
And just to finish off with, what were the raw ingredients that you needed in order to, I guess, bring together the people to then go, we understand what the solution could be?
Yeah. So one of it was one of the great things was, so we are a lot of engagement in the communities, right? So this area is approximately 80 to 100 kilometers in length by about 20 to 40 kilometers wide is the area of influence we have. So a very, very large area, but we talk to all the communities, constant engagement with them. And so listening to them, but then also coming in and saying, hey, here's an idea. And then listening to them and saying, oh, but this is a problem with that idea. All right, I don't have the money to go and put the irrigation in. Oh, wait a minute. We can do that. We can help you with that. We can do a micro lending program, And so you start back and forth. The dairies are run by women from the communities. They take great pride in it. They take great pride in winning the awards that they do, and certification. We help them get certification. We have vets that can come and look at the goats. So we've set up this system for the community, and this has become sustainable. They don't necessarily need us now in order to run these dairies. And so, yeah, so that's what it was all about. It's just getting it started. I mean, people are resourceful. If they've given an opportunity, they're incredibly resourceful.
And I guess that, one day the rock in the ground will run out.
Correct.
So this is an example of using the fact that there is wealth being released from the ground to actually instigate a more sustainable and long-term form of socioeconomic development.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big problem, right, in and around mining industries the mining industry is ultimately the rock does run out, right? And where does the responsibility should lie? I mean, the basic economic theory would suggest, well, you're paying your taxes, the government should be reinvesting some of that in these communities. That's naive, right? And we have to understand that that's a naive approach, and that we have a social responsibility as well. Like every company has a social responsibility in my mind. And so the fact that we're there and we're there for so long, is trying to find these win-wins for everybody that, we can feel comfortable that ultimately we hope Caraíba is still around for quite a long time. But once that ends, that the communities are empowered in such that they have somewhere else to earn livings.
So finally, what next?
What next? We've got a great team at Ero. I don't think I'll ever leave the industry. But I'm on the back nine, so to speak, with regards to it, and supporting our team and trying to get the word out. Right, trying to get the word out. I think it's important that we need to do a better job of getting the word out that we're important to the world, and people like Mark Kudafani is doing an amazing job with regards to that, and others. But we need more of the word getting out, and people like yourself helping. This industry is important to life. And particularly, it's become, I think, much more important today to modern life because of the way technology is going. And as opposed to where it was 40 years ago, 50 years ago, even 100 years ago, where the impact was minimal. The impact today is incredible. And, we all have to realize that.
So with that, thank you very much, David.
Thank you very much for your time. It was great.
So that was my conversation with David. And what stayed with me most is his belief in people. Whether he's talking about geologists, graduate engineers, local communities, or university researchers, there's a consistent thread running throughout everything he says. Give people responsibility, give them trust, encourage them to ask questions, and don't assume that good ideas only come from the top of the organisation. One thing I particularly enjoyed is that David seems genuinely excited by change. He isn't afraid of new technologies like artificial intelligence. He actively encourages his team to experiment with them. He isn't convinced that the most experienced person in the room automatically has the best answer. And he believes that giving younger people real responsibility isn't a risk, it's an investment in the future. That willingness to challenge conventional thinking feels refreshing. Another thing that really resonated with me is David's respect for geology. Throughout the conversation, he keeps coming back to one simple idea. Nothing else happens until someone finds the ore body. Without exploration, there are no mines, and without geologists, there is no industry. It's a perspective that I suspect many geologists listening will rather enjoy. But perhaps my favourite story from the entire conversation was about the goats. On the surface, it sounds like a wonderfully unusual community project. But underneath, there sits a much more important lesson. The solution wasn't to build a fence or to tell people what they could or could not do. It started by listening, understanding why the goats kept ending up on the mine site, understanding the needs of the community, and then working together to create a solution where everyone benefited. For me, that's responsible raw materials in action, not because someone had all the answers, but because different people came together, each bringing a different perspective until they found one. Finally, I was struck by David's optimism. He clearly believes the mining sector can do better. Whether that's embracing new technology, attracting more diverse talent, giving greater responsibility to younger leaders, or simply helping society better understand where the materials we all depend on actually come from. He doesn't pretend that the challenges are small, but he does believe they're solvable. And perhaps that's the biggest takeaway from our conversation. Progress doesn't happen because we keep doing what we've always done. It happens because we're prepared to ask better questions, to challenge old assumptions, to trust people, and to remain open to ideas that might once have seemed unconventional. Because ultimately, responsible raw materials aren't just about extracting the resources society needs. They're about creating organisations, partnerships, and communities that are prepared to learn, adapt, and keep improving. And I think David's career is a great example of exactly that. And that, ultimately, is what the Responsible Raw Materials podcast is all about. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Responsible Raw Materials brings together diverse voices from across industry, academia, government, civil society, and beyond. We explore shared challenges and opportunities that go well beyond minerals and metals alone. We also curate a growing library of hundreds of talks, resources, and insights, free to access and designed to support learning, informed decision-making, and shared understanding. So if you want to find out more, please feel free to explore all our resources at www.responsiblerawmaterials.com.